Connecting in.
Hi!
All right.
We figured it out.
Oh my
Yeah,
God, that's awesome.
that's great.
Yay. Welcome.
Yay! Hello.
I've never done the live Instagram with somebody else before, so I can see the little, and of course I'm old, so I don't have my reading glasses on. So I'm like tapping the button, I'm like, it's not working.
You're like, come on. We
Seriously
did
though,
it.
I'm like,
We
how can
just
it
can't
not
touch
work like right
anything for
now?
like
Oh my
15
God.
minutes.
God. So welcome. So we can
Thank
get
you.
started. So for people who don't know, my name is Monika. I'm MEDA's executive director, and I am super pumped to introduce you to Sarah LaCourse, who is a personal trainer who focuses on holistic and sustainable movement. She also happens to have a degree in psychology and neuroscience, which I find very impressive. She has a background in national competitive sports. She also happens to be an individual in remission from an eating disorder, and she's a recovery mentor. So she is a busy human.
Jack
So
of all trades.
welcome to MEDA's Instagram.
Thank you.
Question for you that I think people probably want to know. Can you tell us a little bit about like what is holistic and sustainable movement? What does that mean?
Yeah, so I term it holistic and sustainable movement because I like to think of it as like whole body, whole mind, so that mind body connection. So, really looking at movement from a perspective of not only physical health, but also mental, emotional, and possibly spiritual health for people, if that's a thing. So, we're really taking the whole person into consideration when we're talking about movement. We're not just moving for the sake of moving. Like, I want people to really feel it and to be able to use the connection with the physical body to enhance the connection with like mental, emotional, and spiritual. So the mind.
That's awesome. I'd never
Yeah.
actually heard that term before. And then when you
Yeah.
started moving it, like talking about it, I was thinking that a lot of people would be really interested in understanding a little bit more about what that is.
Yeah,
And before we
absolutely.
talk a little bit more about movement, one other thing I wanted to kind of throw out there for you to maybe explain to people is you are somebody who kind of routinely will use the term remission instead of recovered or in recovery from an eating
Yeah.
disorder. Can you talk a little bit about that just to like let people know
Yeah.
what your thoughts are around it?
Yeah. So how I kind of think about it, and I mean like there's no like right or wrong here. Everybody has their own um preference of term and like that's totally cool. Remission resonates really well with me. I think about it as like recovery, say you have like pneumonia, right? And you recover from the pneumonia and it's then gone. And then if you got pneumonia again, it's like a second thing. So it's more, I think of it more on that level, whereas remission more like chronic illness. So you can kind of go into remission where it's not like presenting behaviors, you're not presenting any symptoms from it, but it was still a thing and it's still kind of there. So for example, like if you have lupus or another autoimmune disease, like if you're in remission from it, you're not presenting any symptoms or you're not having it affect your life in any way, but it is still kind of part of you.
It's kind of interesting because I never really thought about that before. And when you talk about it, it reminds me of for people who've had the chicken pox, right? Like, I
Yeah.
mean, it's like, maybe that's a weird example, but like the chicken pox goes away, but the
Yeah.
virus is still somewhere
It's
dormant
still
in the
there.
body and it
Yeah.
could wake up again and be like the shingles,
Yeah.
which is interesting because it's like a different form of the virus, which sometimes,
Yeah.
when people do have relapses, it looks a little bit different than like their original illness really did. So
Yeah.
an interesting term. So like I thought people might be interested in hearing more about that. So that's
Yeah.
pretty cool. Yeah,
Yeah.
thanks for sharing that part.
Absolutely.
So question for you for, first really good question, I think is so people are completely freaking out right now
Yeah.
because they can't go to the gym.
Yep.
Or they feel like they can't move for people who are able to do that. So like what advice do you have for them?
First, don't freak out because that's literally not helpful in any capacity at all. So I mean, if we think about it too, right now we're all extremely stressed, right? Like we don't know what's happening. There's a lot of uncertainty. We're not really sure like what's going to be happening in a week or two. And that mental and emotional stress is going to also relay into physiological stress. So our hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis, your HPA axis, like mental stress is definitely going to become a physical stressor as well. So remembering that right now our bodies kind of need a little TLC and love, and just being gentle with them. So, you know, for people that are able to do movement, it's okay if it looks different right now because everything looks different right now.
Yeah, it's funny. I remember people have been saying, you know, like, oh, we're in the middle of a pandemic, and what does this say about our relationship to kind of movement in our bodies if we're all kind of freaking out about being able to go to the gym or not being able to go to the gym, right? And your point about like calming down, you know, and like, yeah, chill is really helpful.
Yeah.
And though I think that there are people that are going to struggle with that, right?
Oh, absolutely. Because we're being completely thrown off our usual routines and patterns and just everything's like, bah. So, yeah, absolutely.
That's just hard in general.
Exactly. Yeah.
For people who can move, right? Who they're medically okay to, they have their teams okay to, and they're used to a certain amount of movement. Like, what do you recommend for them, for that group of people?
Yeah, absolutely. So I would recommend if you have some type of movement routine, whether it's trail running, hiking, yoga, Pilates, weightlifting, whatever you're typically doing and you're comfortable with, try to see if you can replicate that at home. It's going to look a little different, most likely, unless you're doing a home practice like in your normal life. But that's okay. Again, like, but see, like, so if you go to a yoga class typically at a studio, you know, pick your favorite types of flow moves that you would do there and do them at home. Just put on some gentle music or, you know, whatever type of music that makes you feel grounded. If you go to dance classes, start doing dance parties in your living room. Like I do that all the time. It's great. 10 out of 10 recommend. If you do strength training, if you're able to do some strength training at home, if you have equipment, that's cool. Otherwise, like just using your body, like push-ups, you know, squats, some lunges, just like whatever is comfortable for you right now, I would say is key. Even just, you know, going for walks outside, that out if you're able to, getting outside, it's good. It's good for your mind.
What would you say to people who are like looking for, like they're on YouTube and they're looking for videos, or they're on like feeds and they're looking for, because I feel like the fact that, you know, we're all kind of like inside, it almost seems like the fitness industry and the diet industry have like pounced on us.
Yes. Yeah. Because all over Instagram, I'm seeing push-up challenge, pull-up challenge, etc. All these challenges. And then like all of the studios and gyms that are closed are doing like all of their classes are becoming virtual classes. So we're kind of being bombarded from every single angle on social media with this. I would say I don't really recommend it, especially for individuals in recovery. The exception to that would be if you're pretty far along in recovery and you're able to take a step back before you do it and take a step back while you're engaging in some type of online platform class and really check in with yourself and be like, is this serving me? Do I feel grounded? Do I feel okay? Am I enjoying it? And is the intention behind me doing this to benefit myself? Like, what's the intention behind it? And to make sure that that intention stays in a place that's positive for you and your growth and your recovery.
What would you say? Because I love those questions, and I think it's really helpful for people to remember to like check in with their bodies and how do I feel and exactly like what's the intention. Because I feel like, or I think that it can be easy to say, oh, I started this really innocently, but I think the vast majority of people know when you start to cross that line.
Yeah.
Right, where you're like, you kind of know that this is becoming more of like an eating disordered thing, or more of like an exercise addiction thing. But you can justify it to make yourself feel okay about it. But then there's that, you know that it's happening. And for people who start to get, I guess I want to say like stuck in a routine of like, oh, I did that yesterday, so I have to do it again. I have to do it again.
Yeah, like stuck in that like habitual thought pattern.
Yeah. That. What would you say to those folks? Like, what would you?
I would say, take note of it. If you're a journaler, journal it. Otherwise, just write it down, put it in your phone. And then whenever you're able to talk to one of your team members, whether it's therapist, dietitian, physician, chat with them about it. And that way you kind of have that recall memory to bring to them, and you guys can start working through that. Because I think that especially in earlier recovery, movement it can bring up things. So to be able to then take that to your team is really helpful.
So you have this background in nationally competitive sports. So you know a lot about, and you've known a lot about movement for a long time. You're a really active person, and you pretty much have been ever since you arrived on the planet.
Yeah, pretty much. Right? Yeah.
You're a pretty avid hiker, you snowboard, you do all kinds of stuff. How do you differentiate though between like what's disordered and what's healthy, like what's not?
Yeah. So I think because I grew up competing nationally in jump rope. So when I was 3, my parents put me in gymnastics because I would climb up walls in our house. So they needed to put me in something that I wouldn't like fall on my head, hopefully. So I grew up competing from a very young age. So I did gymnastics and then jump roping. So I had the background in sports prior to my eating disorder development, which I think does create a slight differentiation because I just loved it as a kid. Like I was that child that you could not stop me because I had so much fun with everything. So I have that memory and I know what that feels like for me. That said, like after my eating disorder and like when I was in treatment, I did take a break from all forms of exercise, movement, fitness, whatever word you would like to use there. Because I needed to disconnect them. Because I knew that even though I loved movement and I loved kind of just like having fun and that aspect of it, they got connected. Just because it like eating disorders take over your life. Like they connect to everything. And I knew as much as I did not want to stop moving and stop doing that, I knew that I needed to because it would ultimately let me create peace with it. And that process has taken time, and it's taken a lot of journaling, and it's taken a lot of therapy, and it's taken a lot of being honest with myself about the intention behind what I'm doing and how it makes me feel. And I don't always like the answer, but it's worth the process. So yeah, I'm now able to be like, I love hiking, but if I wake up and I don't want to go, I'm not going because it's just not serving me that day. And that's okay because we have to, listen to where we're at and make sure that the mindset and the intention is there.
For people who, I'm just thinking, because like it sounds like you have this great memory, right, of like what it's like to move before you had an eating disorder. And so you've got that like muscle memory and you have the emotional memory, but there are so many people who don't even really start working out or any type of exercise pattern until like it's basically part of their eating disorder. So they don't know what that feels like. Can you help them differentiate, like as you're starting to maybe get back into movement? Like how do you know what's healthy, what's not? Like, am I getting back into trouble? Like what is...
I would say movement's definitely going to bring things up. I mean, it's kind of cathartic in a sense. It can be. So checking in with yourself, and usually like what I go by is kind of a gold standard, if you will, is if it makes you feel joy, if it brings you joy, if it makes you feel kind of a mind-body connection that you felt as a little kid when you were running around a playground. Like those little things, even if there is the eating disorder thoughts, if you're also getting that other, because there's probably going to be both, especially at first, but if you're getting the little like joy and your inner child kind of happy because you're just like liking it as you, that's a sign that there's something there. However, it is important to make sure you're kind of watching. Sorry, I talk with my hands a lot. That you're, watching both voices and bringing to your team where you're at with both. But the joy piece is definitely, I would say, a number one to look for because we need joy.
Do you have advice? I mean, this is kind of making me think a little bit about people who are potentially first getting back into movement, um,
Mm-hmm.
as part of their recovery process.
Yeah.
And that, I, as somebody who's worked with people, and, it's not a secret that I have had an eating disorder
Mm-hmm.
historically, and exercise was a part of that for me. So, but now I'm old and I remember as clearly what that was like navigating back into it. But I watch people, as I work with them, really struggle with, wanting to move because it feels good and wanting to move because they've done also a lot of reading and it's kind of crammed down our throats a lot. Like, you should be moving your body. It can bring up a lot of the eating disorder kind of thoughts and behaviors. Do you remember things that were helpful for you or things that are helpful with the clients that you work with
Mm-hmm.
when that starts happening, how you can shift back into separating healthy movement from movement as part of an eating disorder? Does that make sense?
I think so. I mean, so it just in society, right? We're like bombarded from every single angle with fitness culture and diet culture, and they're pretty much intertwined at this point, which I hope to be a force to unintertwine them. But knowing what ultimately and historically has felt really good for your mind and body, and trying to really strengthen that connection and be gentle with yourself with the process, because it is a process. I mean, recovery is a process.
Yeah.
So every aspect of recovery is going to be a process. And developing a mind body connection, even just developing a connection with your physical self and being able to, feel yourself in space just as a human and grounding yourself. I think one thing that I really like to do is sit on the floor and just feel myself on the floor. Or when I go for walks, I kind of mentally think about my feet walking and feeling the ground. So those little grounding things, which at this point I can kind of even draw that into things like hiking or trail running or cycling because I have the experience. But at first, just the simple things like sitting on the floor and feeling the ground and grounding yourself. I think that being able to kind of just bring it back to that is really helpful, because I know for me and some of my clients that I've talked to about this, when you can really have that connection with yourself, everything just kind of flows and it makes sense and it's less scary.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense to me. I'm thinking about, for some people, I think it's really hard for them to get that
Oh,
connection.
it's real. It's a lot of work. Yeah. It's
Um,
And I think especially when you're first getting into this work, stuff's gonna come up. That's okay. It's not bad. We can work through it. You can work
mhm.
through it with your team, like be honest, but I mean things are gonna come up and it's scary, but it's part of the process.
Yeah,
And just be gentle with yourself in this because it's hard.
it is hard. And I think navigating, I think about a lot of different things that come up, for people
Yeah.
in this whole process of movement. One thing that I have been hearing you talk about is like you're talking about a lot of variety,
Mm-hmm.
which I kind of like, and a lot of flexibility. So sometimes that movement is going for a walk. Sometimes it is sitting on the floor or skiing or hiking or, working out with weights or whatever. And it's interesting because I think sometimes that the more variety and the more spontaneity you can have,
Mm-hmm.
the better off you are, because it kind of prevents you from getting into that habituated brain that the eating disorder kind of likes,
Yeah.
where you then feel like you have to do the same thing day after day after day, and then you're like that gerbil on the wheel.
Yeah.
One thing that I would like to ask you that I didn't ask you is what recommendations do you have for people who are kind of stuck in their house during quarantine and they live in a larger body? and they're looking for some way of becoming a little bit more active. Like some people who can't actually get to the floor to sit down to be grounded. It's physically not possible for them right now, and may never be, and that's okay, right? Because we all know that bodies
totally
have different shapes and sizes. So what recommendations might you have for those? Oops.
I would say, I mean, if you're able to get outside, like little walks is a great thing, especially, I mean, that's just for anybody right now because time outside is really helpful. If we're not able to get outside, like, because I know that a lot of cities right now are completely like shut down, finding whether it's like music that you like and just like moving around your like your apartment, house, you know, what have you, and just like moving around and like feeling how it feels to move your body, as basic as that is, because that's actually really important to do and to feel and to like enjoy the feeling or try to feel connected when you're doing it.
That's great, actually, because I think that that is one of the things, and that's one of the things a lot of people will ask about and look for, and we spend time looking for different venues and avenues for people who live in larger bodies or who don't have the ability to go someplace, you know, or do something. So those kinds of suggestions are really helpful. Yeah, for sure, I think, for people.
I think just basic movement is overlooked a lot too, because it's like, gotta do the next best thing, gotta do more, because that's just the message that we're given, whether it's around fitness or not. But it's bringing it back to a really basic level. Like if you think about like the base of a pyramid, right? Like you don't just, I'm just going to use jump roping, for example, but like you don't just get to a competition level. You have to be able to do easier tricks or moderate and then easier tricks. And you have to be able to swing a jump rope, and you have to be able to jump, and you have to be able to stand on 2 feet, and you have to be able to balance, and you have to be able to know where your arms and your legs are moving together. Like it's a pyramid.
And being okay with where you're at.
Yes.
You know, so because it occurs to me like a lot of the stuff that we've been talking about is like thin privilege. Right. So I'm thinking about the folks that are living in larger bodies and also like disabled bodies.
Yeah.
So like thinking about movement, maybe it is movement that you're moving on the couch and you're moving your arms. I have my mother-in-law is this really wonderful person who has discovered chair yoga. And it's really just her upper body that's moving, and she's found some ways to adapt that. And some friends in larger bodies are also able to take part in that right from their home it doesn't cost any money. Those things are really, really nice.
Yeah, it's just finding what works for you, that is within your resources and works for your life.
Yeah. And I wonder, I don't know if you know any off the top of your head, but you know, it occurs to me what might be really awesome for people is if we could work together to locate some of these resources.
Yeah.
For all different, like people living in all different bodies, both like people in larger bodies, people in disabled bodies, and and people who are in able bodies. Yeah. That maybe we could get them some resources that they could use right in their homes that are reliable and safe.
Yeah, we could put together like a list and put it on MEDA's website.
Yeah, we can put it, and we'll put it on our Instagram because it's easy to find, or in our stories. And also like maybe hop back on and just do a quick chat about it and put it on yours as well, and just get that information out there for people. Because I'm thinking
it's not super accessible, like the resources to find it. Like it takes a little looking, which is frustrating.
Yeah.
Especially as a fitness professional, it's frustrating. But
yeah, I think that would be really good. So for people who are watching or might maybe watch this later on, check back. Sarah and I will work together to put together a nice list of resources for you guys that you can use for yourselves or with your clients, depending on you know, if you're a professional watching this, or if you happen to be somebody who's working on your recovery and watching this. But this is fun.
Yeah.
This has been really fun. Thank you for doing this with me tonight.
Thank you. Yeah, if you guys have any questions, just comment on this afterwards. I think you can do that. I've never actually done a live on Instagram.
It shuts it off when you do live. They can comment like now while we're talking, but they can DM either one of us. But we can also take some of those questions if I think we can scroll back over, you know, later on as we'll save the video.
Yeah,
and then we can like look back and see what we missed, because I'm sure we did. You know, with my
I'm a squirrel.
Yeah, well, no, I'm looking at like the print is so tiny in my I need like a big magnifying glass to be able to see it, but we can at least revisit, and if there's stuff that we missed, we can put it together.
Yeah,
for people, and I think we'll have a good list for folks too. So awesome. This has been great.
Yay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.
And save it. It's been really fun. So we'll do it again.
Awesome. Thank you. Have a good night, everybody.